A Spartan is born, but not welcomed. Hello everyone. Moving on, we're going to step quietly into a room that doesn't feel like a room at all. It's more like a dry cave wrapped in woven reeds and smoke. The air is warm from the fire pit. In the center, but the smell of wool, of ash, of something sour, makes it difficult to think about comfort. Outside, a baby cries. Inside, no one rushes to him. A Spartan child is not treated gently, not even on the first day. Especially not on the first day. The elders gather near the doorframe, their faces marked by war and time. No women here, not for this part. The child is brought forward, swaddled but already stiff from cold air. He is unwrapped slowly, like a scroll that may or may not deserve to be read. An old man with broken teeth peers at the boy. He touches the knees, measures the chest, checks the eyes for clarity, the skin for spots, the bones for shape. He grunts. The baby, flinches. No words are exchanged. The man steps back. Another elder steps forward. This one carries a wooden stick and places it under the child's back. If the spine curves, even slightly, the child may be ... removed. True historical event. In ancient Sparta, newborn males were inspected by a council of elders from the state. If the child appeared weak, malformed, or sickly, he was taken to the base of Mount Taygetus and left in a place called apothete, the deposits. This was not myth. It was state law. The child before them today is judged acceptable. Strong back, clear cry, he will live. But the judgment has been made by the state, not the mother. The mother watches from outside. She is not allowed in, but she doesn't weep. Spartan women do not weep for warriors, not even tiny ones. The father, if present, says nothing. He does not embrace the child. He nods. That is all. And so begins the slow, hard process of becoming a Spartan. In most other Greek city-states, a baby might be celebrated, named, swaddled in soft linen, sung to sleep by an aunt. In Sparta, the child is carried to a communal hall and placed beside 20 other infants, all crying together in a chorus of rawness. No song follows, just the crackle of the fire. Strange historical fact. Spartan infants were sometimes bathed in wine instead of water. It was believed this would toughen the child, kill weakness, and prove sturdiness. Modern science does not recommend this. Neither, to be fair, did the babies. The days pass. The infant is not coddled. He is not swaddled in luxury. He is placed on a thin blanket in a public crib. The nurse assigned to him is not his mother. She is state-trained, brutal in method, and oddly calm. She doesn't respond to cries. She watches, listens, waits. Cries are met with silence, sometimes with cold water splashed on the child's face. He learns quickly. That's the point. By 3 months, he stops crying. By 6, he stiffens when bathed. By 1 year, he stares back at the adults, not with fear, but with focus. Unanswered historical question. There are no complete records detailing exactly how Spartan infants were raised in the earliest months. Most accounts come from foreign observers, like Plutarch, who may have exaggerated or misunderstood. Were the Spartan methods always this harsh, or did later writers romanticize the brutality? At age 2, the boy is already walking. At 3, he is speaking, not much, but clearly. His first word is not mother. His first word is sword. That is considered ideal. He learns to eat barley, olives, and occasionally cheese, but never soft bread. Chewing builds jaw strength. When he stumbles, no one rushes to help. He is expected to stand on his own, every time. By age 5, he is taught how to sleep on a bed of reeds. He is praised if he doesn't wake up crying. If he does, he is not punished, but he is not comforted either. He simply wakes up hungrier the next day. At 6, he is measured again, this time by height, weight, posture, and eye contact. A small mark is placed on his shoulder with dye. This means he will enter the Agoj next year, the state-run military training program. His mother says nothing. His father gives him a thin blade of olive wood to carry. Not to use, just to hold. A promise of what's to come. 1 year left before he leaves home. Forever. He will return only as a warrior. Or not at all. Whispered joke 1. Spartan lullabies were mostly just instructions about posture. Whispered joke 2. If the baby giggled, it was considered a personal challenge. Whispered joke 3. First tooth. No celebration. Just chewing practice, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Let me know where you are and what time it is. This is one of those check-in moments where you remind yourself you're not in a Spartan nursery right now. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan to make some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The Agoj begins. Goodbye, mother. Hello, hardship. He is 7 years old when they come for him. The knock is not loud, just 2 dull taps on the wooden frame of the door. The boy is already dressed. No one helped him dress. He hasn't needed help. For years, his mother kneels to smooth the wool on his tunic, but she does not embrace him. That would be inappropriate. She whispers something in his ear. No one knows what. He nods. That is enough. A man with a leather strap around his shoulder gestures silently. The boy walks toward him. No tears. No turning back. No visible fear. The door closes softly behind them. He will not return home. This is the beginning of the Agoj, the Spartan state-run education system that will teach him how to fight, endure, obey, and above all, not feel. True historical event. The Agoj was a compulsory training program for all male Spartan citizens, starting at age 7. It was designed not only to build warriors, but to create communal loyalty, self-discipline, and complete subservience to the state. Boys lived in barracks, separated from their families, and raised by older peers and appointed mentors. The barracks are not inviting. The beds are little more than bundles of reeds. The blankets are thin. The windows let in too much wind. He is placed in a unit of 12 boys, all roughly his age. They don't speak at first. One tries to ask for bread. He is told to be quiet. Food is limited, on purpose. They are meant to be hungry. Hunger sharpens instinct. Hunger becomes a companion, like a cold shadow that follows them through every activity. The boy eats his evening meal, a thin soup made from pig's blood and vinegar. It tastes like salt and sadness. He finishes it without comment. Strange historical fact, the Spartan staple meal, milaz zomos, or black broth, was so famously unappetizing that visiting Greeks often refused to try it. One Roman visitor claimed it tasted like punishment. For Spartans, it was a point of pride. At night, the boys lie still. They are not allowed to talk in bed. Any sound after lights out is punished with a switch. One boy weeps softly. The others pretend not to hear. By the end of the week, no one cries. Training begins before dawn. First, marching, then running, then more running, then formation drills. Not with weapons, not yet, but with fists clenched, and bodies moving as one. They are corrected with shouts. If shouting doesn't work, a sharp slap across the face usually does. The boy is taught to walk in a straight line without swinging his arms. He is told that swagger is for Athenians. Spartans move like spears, narrow, fast, and quiet. His mentor is 19 years old. His name is Diodorus. He does not smile. He does not explain. He corrects through silence and repetition. He can recite entire battle strategies without raising his voice. When the boy stumbles during a foot drill, Diodorus stops the exercise. He kneels beside the boy, looks into his eyes, and says only, "Again." They repeat the entire drill, all 12 boys. No one complains. By the end of the first month, the boy can run 5 miles barefoot. He can climb a stone wall without help. He has learned the basics of stick fighting, team coordination, and how to tie sandals using just his elbows. He has not spoken to his mother. Unanswered historical question. Scholars still debate whether the agoge was truly as rigid and uniform as described by later authors like Plutarch. Were there small acts of kindness between mentors and boys? Did anyone ever break the rules and comfort a homesick child? If they did, history did not record it. Each week, the boys' group is evaluated. They are ranked from 1st to 12th. The highest-ranked boy gets an extra ladle of soup. The lowest-ranked has to stand by the door during meals. The boy is ranked 4th. Not bad, not great. But he remembers the names of the top 3. There are no birthdays here, no personal holidays. The only celebration is the gymnopedia, a festival of dancing and strength. And even then, they are judged on posture and breath control. One afternoon, the boy is told to recite a poem while holding a squat. He holds the squat. He forgets the poem. He is whipped, not out of cruelty but because mistakes must have... Wait, and yet, somehow, the boy grows stronger. Not just in body, in silence, in posture, in stillness. He begins to understand that feelings are for the private mind, not for the public world. That pain is useful. That obedience is strength. That nothing matters more than the group, whispered Joke 1. Spartans invented the group project, but forgot to include snacks. Whispered Joke 2. The dormitory motto is "You can cry, just do it quietly while sprinting." Whispered Joke 3. If the soup jiggles, that's a sign of pride. The boy falls asleep that night with a scratch on his hand and a bruise on his ribs. He does not ask for help. He presses his hand to his chest and whispers his own name. Tomorrow is another day, and another step toward becoming what Sparta wants him to be.
Cheating, stealing, surviving. The curriculum gets creative. The boy is now 8, possibly 9. In the agoge, no one tells you your birthday. Time is marked by muscle, by scars, by the number of times you've gone to bed without food. And food, or the lack of it, has become the day's lesson. Again, breakfast is nothing. Lunch is implied. Dinner is a thin handful of barley and a stare from the overseer that seems to say, "Are you going to do something about it?" The answer is yes, because at this stage of his training, the boy is expected to steal, not as a failure of character, but as a test of it. True historical event. In the Spartan agoge, boys were deliberately underfed and encouraged to steal food to survive. The trick wasn't stealing, it was not getting caught. If a boy was caught, he was punished, not for theft, but for failure. The lesson: be clever, be silent, be successful. So the boy learns, slowly, carefully. He studies shadows. He watches the way guards move at dusk. He learns how to walk without crunching gravel. He learns that if you pretend to trip while passing the pantry, sometimes your hand can return with a fig. He also learns what happens when you fail. One evening, a boy in his unit, a small one, quick on his feet but nervous, tries to take a loaf of flatbread from the back kitchen. He's caught by an overseer who was hiding in the shadows. The punishment is swift. The boy is made to carry the bread on his head for an hour, while the others chant a song about clever foxes and slow mice. The boy never tries again. The others learn. Strange historical fact. There are accounts of Spartan boys hiding stolen cheese under their cloaks, and even inside their sandals, walking with odd, lumpy gaits that overseers sometimes found amusing, before punishing them anyway. 1. Record mentions a boy who successfully smuggled eggs by balancing them in his mouth for over an hour. The boy, now more confident, develops a strategy. He pretends to sleep during dinner. When the others are distracted, he slides near the fire pit and snatches a strip of meat left by a cook. It's cold, chewy. He chews anyway. He shares half with the boy ranked lowest in their group. The gesture isn't kindness, it's strategy. That boy now owes him, because loyalty, like bread, must be earned in small, warm pieces. Unanswered historical question. No records fully explain whether the Spartan overseers sometimes allowed boys to succeed in stealing as a way to test more than just skill. Was it a game, a lesson, or simply a way to weed out the ones who would always hesitate? The boy's cleverness doesn't go unnoticed. His mentor, Diodorus, says nothing. But one day, he gives the boy a larger rock to carry during drills. Heavier, rougher, a silent sign. You are strong enough for more now. Discipline remains. But now, it includes choice. If the boy chooses to help someone up, no one comments. If he chooses to trip someone, well, only if the overseer is watching. He learns to lie, calmly, not with panic, but with strategy. One night, he hides a fig under his blanket and swears it was a gift from an older boy. It wasn't, but his. Eyes don't blink when he says it. The overseer walks away. That, he realizes, was the real test. Whispered joke 1. In Sparta, snack was more theory than practice. Whispered joke 2. If you stole 2 things and only got caught for 1, you were promoted. Whispered joke 3. The only vending machine was an old goat who occasionally looked sympathetic by his 10th year. The boy has stolen 22 items, been caught twice, and learned to sleep on one eye open. He's lean now, tough, still not the best in his group, but no longer in the middle either. He carries himself like someone with a secret, because he does. There's dried fish in his tunic pocket. And tomorrow, someone will trade him a button for it. A real bronze button. And that's how survival begins to feel like power. Lessons in silence. When speaking is weakness in the gorge. The boy learns that noise is suspicious, laughter is dangerous, and talking too much can get you reassigned to firewood duty for a week. So he speaks less, and when he does speak, it's with purpose. Spartan boys are not raised to charm. They are raised to compress. Words must be folded tightly, like a tunic packed for war. Efficient, sharp, and often more dangerous than a blade. True historical event. Spartans were famously brief in speech. The very word laconic, meaning concise and blunt, comes from Laconia, the region of Sparta. Boys were trained from a young age to answer questions with wit and few words. A long-winded answer was considered a form of weakness. The boy practices daily. In training, if he is asked a question, he answers in 1 sentence, never more. If he's asked again, he shrugs, or nods, or says, "You heard me." That earns him a glance from Diodorus. The kind of glance that means good. Once, during formation drills, another boy complains about his foot. Just 1 sentence, it hurts. The instructor pauses the drill. The boy is made to stand still while the others march around him for an hour. No one says why. Everyone understands. From then on, pain is kept secret. If your ankle throbs, you press it harder to the ground. If your tooth cracks, you chew quieter. Strange historical fact. According to legend, a Spartan boy who stole a fox hid it under his tunic and allowed it to gnaw his stomach rather than confess. By the time he was discovered, he was dying, but had said nothing. While some historians question the story's truth, it remains a brutal symbol of silent endurance. The boy begins to love silence, not the quiet of peace, but the silence of control. He learns to walk without scuffing. He learns to train without grunting. He even learns to breathe without sound, like a wolf on snow. And he listens. He listens to how others speak, who uses too many words, who hesitates before answering, who stutters when nervous. He watches the older boys, the elite ones, who speak only when spoken to, and even then, as if chewing the words before releasing them, he mimics them. Soon he's known for being tight-lipped, not rude, just Spartan. Diodoros tests him. One day he asks the boy, "What's the first thing you do in battle?" The boy answers, "Win." Diodoros does not nod. He simply walks away. That's approval in Sparta. The boy smiles only when no one is looking. Unanswered historical question. How much did Spartan children truly speak to one another when not under direct supervision? Some fragments from later authors suggest they formed secret codes and whispered alliances, but were these part of training or ways of resisting it? No clear evidence remains. There's a game played in the evenings. Each boy must tell a joke, one line, the rule. If anyone laughs, the speaker wins. If no one laughs, he must run 3 laps in silence. The boy tells one about a man who sharpened his spear until it disappeared. No one laughs, he runs. The next night he tries again. This time, someone exhales through their nose. Victory, whispered joke one. Spartans invented deadpan. Unfortunately, they also invented deadpan injuries. Whispered joke two. If a boy yawned in public, he had to apologize in writing, using just 3 words. Whispered joke 3. A Spartan compliment is just, "You didn't fall today." By his 11th year, the boy can hold a stare for a full minute without blinking. He knows how to answer with a nod, a look, a half smirk, and when a visitor from Athens tries to ask him about Spartan training, the boy simply replies, "If you have to ask, you won't understand." The tutor hits back. Discipline by whip, not word by now. The boy no longer asks why. He only watches for who holds the staff, who's holding back a smirk, who walks toward him with a switch in hand and a lesson in mind. Discipline in the agoge doesn't arrive in the form of lectures. It arrives in swiftness, in a grip to the shoulder, in a sharp sting across the back of the calves, in the whistle of air before the strike lands. True historical event, corporal punishment, was an expected and constant part of Spartan education. Boys were beaten for mistakes, for disobedience, and sometimes simply as a lesson in enduring pain. At the sanctuary of Artemis, Orthia, public floggings were performed in front of crowds, both as ritual and spectacle. The boy has made a mistake. He was late to drill by 1 breath. He'd tied his sandal wrong. Diodoros doesn't shout. He points. The boy steps forward. The overseer lifts the whip. 1 strike, then 2. The boy stands. He does not cry. He is praised for that later, in silence, of course. Some days the reason isn't clear. A wrong glance, a slouched spine, a twitch of hesitation. The rules are not written down. That is part of the rule. Strange historical fact, at the Artemis Orthia festival, Spartan boys would endure ritual floggings before an audience. The aim was to see who could withstand the most lashes without flinching. Some sources claim that boys trained for months just to prepare for this event, practicing, on each other with branches and brambles. Pain is not just part of learning, it is the learning. The boy begins to anticipate it, not with fear, but with posture. He stands straighter now. He waits less. He doesn't flinch when a shout echoes from the courtyard. He's learned how to brace his muscles, how to exhale right before impact, how to make his face still, and quietly, in the spaces between discipline, he becomes hard, not cruel, just composed, not numb, just practiced. He sees the younger boys arrive, new at 7, blinking, soft. They cry at first strike. He does not. Sometimes he's told to hold a boy down. Sometimes he watches Diodoros do it. The boy begins to understand that pain shared is not pain halved. It's pain passed along. Unanswered historical question. Did any Spartan boys ever refuse punishment? Were their quiet acts of defiance flinches hidden as shrugs, small grimaces mistaken for smiles? And if so, did anyone see them? Did anyone remember? One night, during dinner, a boy spills his soup. A single drop lands on another's knee. The overseer lifts the rod. The boy who spilled it offers his own shoulder. He receives 2 lashes, then sits down and finishes eating. The boy watches this and says nothing. He does not smile, but later he offers that boy the better bedroll, pain. After all, earns you more than bruises. It earns you presence, whispered Joke 1. The gentle instructor was just the one who used a thinner stick. Whispered Joke 2. If your sandals flew off mid-lashing, you were expected to apologize to the stick, whispered Joke 3. There was no word for time out, unless you count unconscious. In time, the boy learns a strange truth. The body remembers each strike, but it remembers the stillness more. He finds himself pausing between movements now, waiting for judgment even when none comes. His shoulders are straighter, his voice quieter, his walk precise, and inside, the echo of every strike forms a rhythm, not one of fear, but one of readiness. Cold feet, cold food, cold beds. There are no soft corners in the Agoge, no gentle mornings, no warm places. The boy now rises before sunrise each day, summoned not by voice, but by the cold. It enters through the thin cracks of the stone barrack. Wall and snakes its way beneath the reed mat where he sleeps. There are no blankets. Blankets are for comfort. Comfort is for citizens, and he's not that yet. His feet touch the floor. Cold, always. He dresses in the same tunic he's worn since autumn. It no longer fits properly. That, too, is part of the plan. True historical event. Spartan boys were given a single item of clothing, a cloak or tunic, for the entire year. They were expected to wear it in all seasons, regardless of weather. This was intended to toughen the body and teach endurance. He ties the sash. One end is frayed from a sparring match. The knot in the middle hides a tear. He considers asking for a new one, but then doesn't. He's learned that asking for anything is risky. Breakfast is cold barley, not served cold, just left that way. No fires are lit for warmth in the eating halls. The room smells faintly of salt, sweat, and mildew. The boy eats quickly. The spoon is rough. The bowl is chipped. The food is dry. No one chews loudly. That's considered excessive outside. The sky has the color of old wool. The boy steps into the yard. His sandals have lost one strap. His toes poke out. It is freezing. He does not mention this to anyone. He walks like it doesn't matter. Strange historical fact. Some sources say Spartan boys would walk barefoot for most of the year, especially during colder seasons, not because shoes were unavailable, but because blisters, frostbite, and cracked heels were all seen as part of the training. In rare cases, feet were rubbed with vinegar to toughen them further. The day's training begins: grappling, foot races, stone lifting. There is no stretching, no warm-up. The only warm-up is surviving the first hour. He slips once during wrestling. His opponent does not laugh. There is no laughter in failure. Only the quiet shuffle of going back to your place in line. The boy winces, not because he's hurt, because he knows cold will creep into the bruise by midday. The barracks are not heated. Evenings are spent repairing sandals, patching cloaks, and listening to stories, not for amusement, but for instruction. The stories are usually about suffering, or war, or both. Occasionally, someone tries to tell a joke. The boy once offered one about a man so cold his spear shattered in his hands. No one reacted. He added, and then the spear apologized. Someone snorted, "Victory." Unanswered historical question: how did Spartan boys truly survive the winter months with so little protection? Some suggest that additional cloaks or furs were secretly issued in extreme cases, despite official policy, but no clear records confirm this. Were the boys simply that strong? Or was there more mercy than we know? At night, the boy wraps himself in his own arms. He curls his toes under his legs. He listens to the wind rattle the wooden shutters. Some nights, frost forms on the inside wall. He once touched it and felt nothing, not because the frost wasn't there, but because he couldn't feel his fingers anymore. But slowly, the cold stops feeling like a punishment. It becomes familiar. A constant, like a teacher who never speaks, but always watches. The boy no longer flinches when ice clings to his sleeve. He no longer stares at his breath in the air. It's just there, like the rest of him, unnoticed. Enduring. Whispered. Joke 1. The tunic was technically multi-seasonal. That season was misery. Whispered joke 2. If your cloak caught frost and cracked, it was considered graduated fabric. Whispered joke 3. The boy once tried to sleep with his head under his arm. For warmth. Winter deepens. The boy shivers. Less, not because the cold is gone, but because it is part of him now. He wakes in the dark, dresses with fingers that no longer protest, and walks on cracked feet toward another day of frost and fists. And somewhere, beneath the frozen mud and dry barley, something solid is forming.
Brothers in harshness. Loyalty is lifeline. They don't talk about friendship in the AGOGE. The word is too soft. It implies warmth, generosity, the kind of trust that grows in gardens or libraries. Sparta has neither. Instead, there is loyalty, the hard kind. The kind forged in the bite of winter wind, in bruises shared beneath moonlight, in the quiet nod exchanged after a silent mutual decision not to mention the bruised rib you both know is there. The boy learns to trust his unit, not because they are kind, but because they are constant. True historical event. The Spartan Agoge grouped boys into units called Ele, where they lived, trained, ate, and slept together for over a decade. Loyalty within these units was considered essential, not only for military effectiveness, but for moral discipline and survival. Bonds formed in the Agoge often lasted into adulthood, even into battle. There are 12 boys in his unit. He knows who snores, who lies awake at night, who limps when the overseers aren't watching. He knows who flinches at the whip, but never cries. He knows who steals food and who pretends not to see it. One of them, Alikos, speaks too much. At first, by winter's end, he speaks just enough. Another Theron bruises easily, but runs faster than all of them. They've learned to send him ahead when there's food to scout. They don't speak in full sentences. They trade gestures, glances, occasionally a half smile. They start to move as one body, not because they are told to, but because it becomes easier than moving alone. Strange historical fact: in some Spartan rituals, boys were paired off in formal relationships with older mentors, hierastes, and though the exact nature of these bonds is still debated. Beyond mentorship, however, it's recorded that boys often formed lifelong shield brother bonds, not ceremonial, just practical. You kept alive the one who kept you alive. One day during sparring, the boy is paired against a boy from another Ili. Bigger, meaner, the match is uneven. The boy takes 2 hard blows, stumbles, his vision swims. The other boy grins, then a shape moves beside him, Theron, stepping forward. No words, just presence. The instructors say nothing, but the bigger boy steps back. The match ends without formal conclusion. That night, the boy gives Theron his share of beans. Theron doesn't thank him, just eats. Loyalty isn't thanked, it's done. During training drills, when one boy stumbles, another shifts to cover him. When one forgets the steps, 2 others slow slightly to match him. It isn't kindness, it's strategy, because punishment is collective. If one fails, all are punished. If one succeeds, none are rewarded, but everyone walks straighter for it. Unanswered historical question: did Spartan boys ever rebel together? Did their loyalty to one another ever exceed their loyalty to the state? There are whispers of group refusals, silent strikes, even collective lies told to protect one another, but no written Spartan source ever admits this. There's a moment one night, no moon, just cold, when the boy hears a cough, then another, then silence. No one moves. Then a hand reaches out in the dark. Someone pulls the coughing boy's blanket tighter. No names, just sleep, Dot whispered, joke 1. If a boy snored too loudly, he became the pillow for the night, whispered. Joke 2, their favorite lullaby was the wind trying to break the door. Whispered joke 3, sharing soup wasn't generosity, it was risk management. By his 12th year, the boy no longer wonders who his friends are. He knows who would take a strike for him, who would cover his failure, who would carry him silently if his foot broke, and more importantly, who he would do the same for. Not because they are family, not because they are kind, but because they are still here. And being here, together, is the only proof that the Agoj has not yet broken them. The ultimate graduation test. Vanish and kill there. Comes a time in the Agoj when drills stop meaning something. When running in formation no longer raises the pulse. When being struck with a staff feels like a question you've already answered. Too many times, for boys who have made it to around 16, boys who walk straight, speak little, and sleep with one eye open. There is a final trial. It is never announced. No ceremony, no applause. Just a whisper from a mentor. It's time to vanish. True historical event. The cryptia, from the Greek cryptos. Hidden was a secret rite of passage in which selected Spartan youths were sent into the countryside with nothing, no food, no shoes, and no explanation. Their task was to survive, remain unseen, and in some accounts, to kill. It was part spy training, part social control, and part test of raw silent skill. The boy hears the words from Dia, just to go, disappear. That night, he leaves the barracks with a cloak, a knife, and a mouthful of dried barley. No goodbye. No one follows him. He walks into the hills. He is not told where to go. He is not told how long. For 3 days. He sees no one. He sleeps in hollows under roots. He drinks from a stream he has passed dozens of times, but never dared touch. He listens to the wind, to animals, to distant footsteps. On the 4th night, he hears voices. Farmers, perhaps prelates, the enslaved underclass of Sparta, and here the stories become unclear. Strange historical fact. Some ancient accounts, particularly from later writers like Plutarch, claim that participants in the cryptia were expected to kill helots, especially those deemed too strong or too proud. These stories paint the rite as a violent form of social control and psychological testing, but no first-hand Spartan records confirm this. What is certain, the boy was being watched by elders, by other warriors, by the state itself. How well does he move in silence? How fast does he hide? How ruthlessly does he follow orders, or not? One night, he sees a campfire in the woods. He crouches, waits, watches two men sharing a loaf. He does not approach, he listens, then retreats. The next morning, he leaves a symbol near the fire, a mark in the dirt, one that says, "I was here, I chose not to." He returns to the edge of the village 3 days later. His cloak is torn. His feet are cracked and bleeding. His eyes are quiet. Diodorus meets him at the edge of the training field. No greeting, no question. Just a single nod. That night, the boy is allowed to sleep indoors, with a pillow and warm broth. Unanswered historical question. Did all boys in the Agoge undergo the cryptia, or only an elite few? Was it purely a military exercise, or part of a darker effort to instill fear in the enslaved population? Ancient sources differ, and no Spartan document survives. To clarify, no one in the barracks asks him what he saw. He does not tell them, but his place has changed. He no longer eats last. Younger boys watch him now. Older ones make space beside him at meals. There's a silence around him now. Not fear, exactly, just distance. He has passed something they haven't yet faced, and in the shadows of the training yard, his name is no longer spoken as a boy's dot, is said with pause. With weight, whispered joke one. Disappear meant one thing to the trainers and another to your dinner. Whispered joke two. The trick to surviving the woods, don't be the loudest twig. Whispered joke three. You knew you'd passed when no one offered you their barley anymore. At 17, the boy returns. Not a soldier yet, but no longer a student. He has disappeared once. He has come back. And from now on, every order, every nod, every mission will begin in that silent place he made for himself in the wild.
The Spartan warrior emerges. Without ceremony, there is no graduation day, no clapping, no wreaths of olive branches or parade of proud parents. There is only a quiet shift, like a stone finally settling into the wall where it was always meant to be. The boy is now 17. His voice has deepened, his shoulders are broad, his arms carry not just strength, but certainty, and something else, too, stillness. The kind that doesn't flinch, even when the ground shakes. He no longer lives in the barracks with the younger boys. He now lives in the secession, the communal mess for adult warriors. He's still expected to rise early, to train daily, to remain lean and fast. But now he sits beside men. True historical event, the secession was a vital Spartan institution. Every male citizen who completed the Agoge was required to join one of these dining clubs. Meals were simple, and membership was mandatory for maintaining citizenship. Refusing to join or being rejected meant political and social exile. The first time he sits in the secession, he says nothing, he waits. One older warrior passes him a bowl of black broth. He drinks, that's enough. He's in. The line between youth and warrior is not marked by celebration. It is marked by inclusion. One night, he is handed a sharpened spear and told to join the night watch. No announcement, no warning. He takes the spear, stands guard at the southern gate. It's quiet, cold. He doesn't move much. He doesn't need to. Strange historical fact. New warriors were often placed on guard duty before participating in battles, not for rest, but for observation. In fact, many Spartan training units assigned first duties as watchmen, messengers, or assistants. In civic rituals to test alertness, some fell asleep. Those who didn't were remembered. There are new expectations now. You must be alert without twitching, sharp without speaking, ready without moving. The younger boys glance at him in the training yard. When he walks past, they part, not because he's threatening, but because he no longer belongs to them. He spars with full-grown men now. The blows are heavier, the pace is faster, and no one goes easy. Sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses. But now losing means being handed a knife and asked to try again. There is no scoreboard, only the number of times you stood back up, unanswered. Historical question: what exactly determined a Spartan's readiness to serve in the phalanx? The dense, shielded battle formation that defined Sparta's military strategy. Was it purely physical? Did mentors vote? Or did readiness simply announce itself in a way only Spartans could recognize? One evening, an older warrior named Nikitas pulls him aside. He says, "You will carry a shield now." The boy nods. There is no ceremony for this either. Just a rough wooden wall, lined with shields. He chooses one that is heavier than he expected, but it fits. He straps it to his arm and feels the odd sensation of being suddenly more real. Spartans are not trained to win alone. They are trained to hold the line. A man without his spear can still fight. A man without his shield has failed the group. True historical detail: Spartan mothers were said to tell their sons before battle, "Come back with your shield," or, "On it." Losing one's shield in battle was not just a sign of cowardice, but of betrayal. A spear is personal. A shield protects everyone. In drills he now stands between two other warriors. Their shields overlap, not symbolically, but literally. Each man covers the right side of the one next to him. You are not safe unless he is strong. He is not safe unless you are steady. The boy, now no longer a boy, breathes with them, moves with them, sweats with them, stumbles once, recovers. Nobody says a word. That night, in the session, someone passes him the wine jug first. That is the only promotion he'll ever get. "It means you're ours now," whispered Joke 1. Spartan promotions were just smaller punishments, whispered Joke 2. If you smiled at your shield, you were considered emotionally unstable, whispered Joke 3. The test of adulthood: no longer getting your soup stolen. The next day, a message arrives. Training will pause. A real campaign is coming. The men prepare. He sharpens his spear. No one asks him if he's ready. He's not supposed to be. He's simply expected to stand when it's time, and he will.
Life between campaigns, tent, ledger, recruits, it wasn't always swords and shouting. Sometimes the hardest part of being a centurion was filling out forms while someone tried to sharpen a javelin behind you. Because between battles, between roads, between the quiet hum of history being carved into hills, there was paperwork and mouths to train. True historical event. Centurions were not only battlefield commanders but also full-time administrators of their centuries. They kept rosters, supervised supply distribution, assigned camp duties, oversaw training schedules, and enforced regulations. When the army was not on campaign, they served as logistical managers, handling a century of headaches that did not come with swords. Imagine a tent, larger than the rest. Still canvas, still drafty. But inside, a wax tablet, a bucket of dull ink, and a schedule no one liked but everyone followed. The centurion sits, scribbling names and gear inventories while two new recruits try to assemble their kit. Upside down, your shield goes in your hand, he mutters, not unkindly, just. Again, because Rome did not pause. Even when it rested, it rotated. Strange? Historical fact. During peacetime, some centurions served as military police or even local bureaucrats in provinces settling disputes, overseeing infrastructure, and acting as civic officers. Their signature might end up on tax records, bridge permits, or marriage validations. Somewhere between soldier, mayor, and schoolteacher with worse lighting. There were drills to run, new formations to test, rumors of uprisings to prepare for. And of course, recruits got always more recruits. One stumbled while saluting. Another dropped his sword while marching. A third called the centurion sir. He corrected them all with a glance. Not harsh, just firm, because this wasn't cruelty, it was continuity. If a small thing slipped, the big things cracked. Between campaigns, that was the centurion's job to prevent the cracking. Unanswered historical question. How much did centurions actually enjoy these intervals? Some must have relished the rhythm of camp life, others may have itched for movement. Did they dread paperwork more than battle? Did they ever secretly hope for a small war, just to break the monotony? No scroll ever admits it. He inspected tents. He checked rations. He recounted javelins that had already been counted. And every now and then he stood outside his tent at dusk, watching the drills, saying nothing. Not every moment was glory. Not every step was historic. But in these in-between hours, he built the habits that kept the century whole. Whispered joke. 1. The only thing heavier than a full pack was a half-finished roster. Whispered joke 2. If a tent leaked, the centurion inspected the sky before the canvas. Whispered joke 3. Recruits were like sandals. New ones always looked promising but wore out fast. Sometimes he missed the noise of battle, but most days he appreciated the predictability of badly boiled grain and uneven latrine reports, because peace was never permanent. And the paperwork would never finish itself. So the centurion kept writing, kept inspecting, kept nodding at the discipline he'd once struggled to learn himself. This, too, was Rome, not conquest, not ceremony. Just a man with a stick, a tablet, and a schedule that made the empire tick. The centurion's body, damage, endurance, adaptation. By the time a man earned the title of centurion, his body was not the same one he was born into. Not just stronger, stranger, more calloused, more angular. More adapted. Because Rome didn't want beautiful bodies, it wanted useful ones. Bodies that didn't ask questions, just moved when commanded. True historical event. The Roman military placed immense physical demands on its soldiers. Centurions, leading from the front and maintaining constant discipline, endured long marches, intense drills, harsh weather, poor diets, and the wear of command itself. Their physical health was shaped less by aesthetics and more by resilience, stamina, and the ability to recover quickly from repeated stress. You could spot a centurion even without the crest, the squared shoulders from holding formation, the knees wrapped, swollen, twice broken, never rested. The hands, scarred, split, strangely gentle when writing names at dusk, and the feet, oh, the feet, flattened by miles, tough as sandal leather, able to find a rock in any field and keep stepping. Strange historical fact. There are skeletal remains of Roman soldiers showing bone thickening in the lower limbs and compacted vertebrae from the loads they carried. Some centurions were described as bow-legged from endless marching. One joke from a Roman playwright describes an officer whose back was so curved he could sleep standing. They didn't stretch. They didn't ice. They didn't drink electrolytes. They rubbed vinegar on sores, slept in wet tunics, stood up slower each morning, and yet they kept moving, because the body wasn't theirs anymore. It belonged to the century, to the legion, to the expectation that the centurion does not fall behind. Unanswered historical question. Did centurions suffer from chronic pain? Were there treatments for long-term joint damage? The record tells us they were respected for endurance, but says little about their infirmities. Did they simply mask pain behind ritual? Or was injury considered irrelevant as long as the staff still swung and the voice still carried? A young recruit once asked, "Sir, how do you stay strong?" The centurion looked up from polishing his sword and said, "You confuse strong with still here," and that was the truth of it. They didn't feel better. They just kept going. They adapted to pain, endured through rhythm, adjusted their stances, shifted their loads until even discomfort became part of the uniform. Whispered. Joke 1. A centurion's spine could list battles by vertebra. Whispered joke 2. If he didn't groan when sitting, he was either new or lying. Whispered joke 3. His shoulder popped in rhythm with a camp bell. The centurion's body wasn't a temple. It was a tool shed, battered, functional, repaired with spit and leather. But when the trumpet sounded, it stood up. And when the march began, it led. Because in Rome, you weren't expected to feel good, only to feel capable, and that, somehow, was enough to keep walking.
Learning loyalty without knowing why. A centurion didn't question loyalty. He practiced it, like tying sandals, like checking the sky, like scratching a tally mark on a wax board again. Again. It wasn't blind faith. It was muscle memory. True historical event. Roman centurions were expected to exhibit unwavering loyalty first to Rome, then to their general, then to their men. They acted as the backbone of discipline and cohesion, especially during long campaigns and civil unrest. Their sense of allegiance had to survive distance, hunger, conflicting orders, and changing emperors. They didn't ask, "Do I believe in this war?" They asked, "Is the century ready?" Loyalty wasn't philosophical. It was logistical. It meant food got counted. Shields were stacked. Lines held, even when the man beside you shook, and when orders came from a man whose politics made no sense. The centurion didn't flinch. He saluted. He relayed. He enforced. He didn't serve the idea of Rome. He served the continuity of it. Strange historical fact. During the civil wars of the late Republic, many centurions found themselves fighting against other Roman legions. Some switched sides. Others remained loyal to generals like Caesar or Pompey rather than the Senate. Yet even amidst chaos, many maintained discipline and structure, fighting fellow Romans with the same formation they had drilled since youth. A young soldier once asked, "Who do we follow if the generals change?" The centurion answered, "Your line, your orders, then the gods, if you have room." It wasn't personal, it was pattern. Like always taking the same path through camp, like waking just before a second watch without meaning to, like hearing ad signa and standing before you've thought about it. Unanswered historical question. Did centurions ever wrestle with divided loyalty? We know some changed allegiance, but how many stayed out of habit or fear or hope? Did they debate with themselves at night? Or had the structure of duty overwritten any room for questions? Rome, as always, kept the doubts unwritten. There were no loyalty oaths carved in stone, just repetition, march, drill, correct, sleep, repeat. When the world shifted, the centurion didn't. He taught the same formations, gave the same nods, held the same vitus in the same hand. Whispered joke 1. Loyalty didn't mean knowing who was in charge, just who you weren't allowed to interrupt. Whispered joke 2. If the emperor changed mid-campaign, the paperwork changed. Eventually, whispered joke 3. A centurion followed orders, even when the orders forgot where they came from. He didn't follow people, he followed structure. And somehow, that became loyalty. Not to a face, not even to a flag, but to the sound of boots and rhythm, to the shape of a line, to the weight of a staff that still felt familiar, even when everything else had changed. Old centurions and the ache of routines. Some centurions never left the army, even after they did, because you can take the man out of the line, but the line stays in his spine. He wakes before dawn. He counts things that don't need counting. He still checks the wind like he's expecting orders to drift in with the dust. True historical event. Many centurions served for decades, sometimes well beyond the standard 20 to 25 years expected of Roman legionaries. They were often granted land or pensions upon retirement, but many remained in military colonies or administrative roles. Some even re-enlisted in minor posts just to remain near the legions they once commanded. Retirement, for them, was often a technicality. They were given a plot of land, a house with a roof, a family, a stool, and yet, each morning, they inspected the horizon dot, not because they expected an enemy, but because inspection was how they started every day. He'd mutter, "That field's too exposed." As he walked to his own garden, he'd rake in straight lines, plant in formation, weed by quadrant. Strange historical fact. Some veterans continued to wear parts of their uniform in civilian life boots, belts, or even elements of armor. One retired centurion's tombstone shows him still holding the vine staff, a symbol he technically no longer needed, but couldn't quite put down. Routine became a kind of ghost. It followed him through doorways. It stood behind him at markets. It whispered at night when everything else was still. And worst of all, it was comforting. Because war was not what the centurion missed. He missed the certainty. Where to stand, when to eat, what mattered, who listened. A civilian asked him once, "Do you miss battle?" He shook his head. "I miss knowing where my sandals belong." Unanswered historical question. How did retired centurions feel about peace? Did they crave it, resent it, fear it? Some inscriptions speak of honor and fulfillment, but few describe the adjustment. The slow creak of days that no longer begin with trumpets. Did the silence soothe or scratch? Rome didn't record feelings, just stones dot sometimes. He dreamed of armor, not the weight, the fit. He'd wake and flex one leg just once, then get up and sit on his stool, facing east. No one had told him to, but his bones still did. Whispered joke 1. A retired centurion still inspected his door hinges for creak discipline. Whispered joke 2. He once tried to line up his grandchildren by height. Twice. Whispered joke 3. His vines grew in straight rows even if the hill didn't cooperate. He wasn't sad, just shaped by repetition, by burden, by expectation, long since lifted, but never put down. Some days he sat quietly, hands folded, eyes tracing paths on the dirt floor, not thinking of war, but of the next task. Whatever it was, what the legionnaires whispered about them, they didn't speak openly. You don't talk about a centurion that way, not when his tent flap might shift, not when he might be listening 3 thoughts ahead of you, but soldiers whispered. They always did. True historical event. Legionaries held deep respect hand, often deep fear for their centurions. While official histories mention honor and discipline, camp life was full of hushed opinions, side glances, and coded jokes. Centurions were revered, imitated, sometimes mocked quietly, but rarely misunderstood. They were always watching, always listening, always present. He's never smiled, not once. That's not true. He smiled once, the day we ran out of wine. His horse's name is Discipline. I heard him say it. No, it's tomorrow. Because he always says, we march again tomorrow. The centurion was a fixture, a red crest on the horizon, a voice in the wind, a vine staff echo across memory. And when a legionary was new, they learned quickly. Watch him, even when he's still, because stillness means he's thinking, and thinking means work is coming. Strange historical. FACT. Some centurions developed reputations that lasted longer than their commands. There are ancient accounts of soldiers who passed down stories of the one who drilled us by moonlight, or the one who made us run until the cook wept. Even after transfer into other legions, the memory of certain centurions traveled faster than the march itself. He eats at the same time. Every day, he folds his cloak the same way. I saw him walk through fire once. No, you didn't. I did. It was a cooking fire. But still, to the legionaries, he wasn't a man. He was a pattern. He was a clock made of leather and orders. He was inevitable and oddly comforting, because if the centurion was still there, still tapping that staff, still barking again like a prayer, then nothing had truly gone wrong yet. Unanswered historical question. What did the centurions think of their own legends? Did they hear the whispers? Did they care? Did they ever smile in the dark, knowing their men feared their exactitude more than death? Or did they quietly wish they could sit just once without being watched? Rome carved statues, not feelings. Some legionaries tried to copy them, stood with their arms crossed, shouted mock orders into the wind, until the real centurion appeared and said nothing, just stared. And that was enough, whispered Joke 1. A centurion once said again, so often, the word lost meaning. It just meant still awake, whispered Joke 2. He blinked in cadence with the drum, whispered Joke 3. One legionary swore, the centurion slept standing up with his staff held upright like a broom. But here's the truth. They admired him, not for being kind, not for being smart, but for being constant, for keeping order in a world that blew dust into your food and death into your tent. And even when they left the legion, they remembered the way he walked, not fast, not loud, but like the road had already been measured in his mind. They whispered, they watched, they imitated Dash badly, and then, in the quiet of their own campfires, they said what they'd never say aloud. I hope I lead like that someday. The final silence, retirement, memory, and disappearance. There was no trumpet, no banner rolled out, no thank you for your service. Carved in marble. One day, the centurion's name stopped appearing on the duty roster. His vitus hung a little lower in the tent, then nothing. He didn't vanish, he just quieted. True historical event. Centurions typically retired with pensions, land grants, or civil posts. The most senior ranks like the primus pilus were occasionally elevated to equestrian status, granting limited nobility, but most simply left the army after decades of service, rarely returning to public life. Few first-hand accounts exist of what came after, only tomb inscriptions and silent stones. He was there, then he WASN, single quotes, T. His cot folded, his cloak gone, his tent repurposed for supplies, no parade, no farewell, just soldiers shifting their gaze to the next red crest. The rhythm didn't stop. It's COULDN. Single quotes T. One man, gone meant one name, promoted, one voice raised, one hand now tapping the ground with a new cadence. But some soldiers noticed, in the way the drills felt a beat off, in how the air near the parade ground didn't tighten. In the same way, and how no one raised an eyebrow exactly the way he had. Strange historical fact. Some centurions chose to be buried with their vitus in hand, staff curled beside bone. Others requested a likeness of themselves with their helmet under one arm and no smile at all. Even in death, they stood at attention. The legion moved on. It had to, but in the corners of tents, in the pauses between training calls, his name still surfaced, not with reverence, but in passing. The way you talk about a stone that's always been in the path. A centurion wasn't remembered for being liked, he was remembered for lasting. Unanswered historical question. What did the final days feel like for a retiring centurion? Did he dread the silence? Did he carry the sound of marching in his chest like a phantom rhythm? Did he miss the command or just the predictability of being needed? The historians do not say that are no stories of grand goodbyes. Just one more inspection, one more slow nod. Then, gone. And the army kept drilling, kept marching, kept building like he had taught it to. Whispered joke one. Some say his vitus was passed on. Others say it just walked away on its own. Whispered joke two. The camp dog waited at his tent flap for 3 more days. Whispered joke three. One soldier claimed. He still heard him shouting again. In his sleep. From 5 tents over. So the centurion disappeared into farmland, or memory, or stone. And one day, a young recruit asked, who used to command this line? The veteran next to him shrugged. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Because how do you describe a man who never needed describing? When he was there, you only felt his absence by how precisely the dust settled once he was gone. Finale, the last formation. You don't see them now. Not in armored dot, not with cloaks pressed by wind, not standing beneath the bronze tips of Roman banners. But if you listen slowly, patiently, in the dust and in the stillness, you can almost hear the footfall of discipline. The centurion was not a hero. He was not carved for applause. He was not praised by poets, nor followed by crowds. He was constant. He made the line hold. He taught the rhythm of walking before the rhythm of war. He repeated commands until they became bones. And then he stood where it mattered most, between men and fear, between structure and collapse. Not because he loved battle, but because someone had to keep count of supplies, of breath, of direction. He did not lead with speeches. He led by walking first. Even now, his shape remains in the routine, in morning drills, in quiet meals shared back to back, in the pause before a soldier shouts ready. That pause, that second of still certainty, is where the centurion once stood, not smiling, not loud, but there. His legacy is not carved in victory. It's carved in repetition, in the turning of boots along gravel roads, in the tightening of cloaks before night watch. End away, hands still fold behind backs when no one is watching, because centuries pass, but the habit of discipline lingers, long after the voices fade, not long after the staff is dropped, long after the line has broken and reformed 100 times. He's not in the statue. He's in the space between formations. He's in the nod shared between officers at dusk. He's in the whispered order that doesn't need explanation. He's what remains in the shouting stops, the shape of duty, etched in posture, carried by silence, left behind like a warm echo beneath the weight of Roman dust.